The root cause of all suffering is what's called identification. In different traditions, they talk about it. It's believing that you are the ego or the mind. And I've been puzzling, how does ketamine work? How does mushrooms work? How does marijuana work? Because I've been seeing these incredible results with hundreds of people last year with ketamine work. And it all of a sudden came to me, all suffering is because you're identified with your mind. If you've got a trauma, it's something that happened and you think that's you. You make your ego out of your identifications. So all end of suffering is disidentification. You let that shit go. And if you think of it that way, when you use ketamine, you disidentify, you let all kinds of things go. The active, what I could see with hundreds of patients is almost everybody would love themselves more and would be more open to love after the session and would let go of the trauma memories. And I kept wondering, how does that happen? And it gradually came to me, identification is an active energy flow where you're holding on to these memories. You're saying, that's me. I'm suffering because somebody beat me or exploited me, or I'm sick, or I'm a bad person. All these different identifications, all these different things that people call the psychological problems, they have in common identification. That I'm a bad person, I'm unlovable, I had this terrible thing happen to me. And the healing is not that you get rid of the memory, it's you disidentify with it. The memory's still there, but you say, dude, that's yesterday. It's not happening anymore. My friend Prem Bandhu is a guy who's 70 years old. And he has PTSD from when he was an orphan in World War II. And he was put in an orphanage. And the guy has been doing therapy and been in therapy for over 40 years. He's done energy therapy, talking therapy, you name it. He's done all these different, and he's been a therapist for 30 years. Just recently, he did some ketamine, facilitated therapy out in San Francisco. And the way he says it, I was talking to him about how people use trauma memories to avoid being in the present. And he said, that's exactly it, Bodhicitta. I used to do that, and I just don't go there anymore. The memory's still there, but I don't bring it out and say that's me anymore. And as I've been looking into it over the past week, it all of a sudden came to me. Every kind of psychological and many physical healings are letting go of an identification. And that's why we're seeing healing in our ketamine work of people who've had addictions, alcoholism, fibromyalgia, depression. The common element in all these different things is the identification with your own suffering. And then I thought of you two guys, that you've been one of my heroines, Sammy Joe, because you've never identified with your illness. The body has the illness, but that's not Sammy Joe. So she doesn't have to act like she's suffering all the time. And Doug, I've learned so much from you as you've let go of your own abused childhood memories. And again, the most common language is to say you disidentify. You just stopped hanging on to it. The way this differs from so many other explanations and theories about healing is they talk about retelling the trauma, or they talk about the memory instead of the being who is identifying with the memory. And the common healing is to disidentify. And when you take psychedelics, not only does it physiologically somehow stop the identification process, and I could go into that, but I don't feel like right now. But it's a trip. It's not you. This is something your mind is doing. That's identification, disidentification, witnessing, knowing that you're watching the trip, but you're not the trip. So all psychedelics open a window to meditation if you can just remember, while you're having the trip, I'm only watching this movie. So that's it in a nutshell, and I would love to hear anything you guys have to say about this.
So, Bodhicitta, as usual, you can explain what most people can't explain, and you can explain it so that anybody can understand it, and you did a beautiful job. I have tracked this. We've been working with the same thing. We seem to be working on some of the same things. I was able to get my sister, who died December 14th last year, to let go of everything she was identifying with, because we grew up in the same abusive household, and she did. She died with a glowing, with a smile on her face, and no fear. So, because she stopped disidentifying with that before, but she had to relive it, and she said once you could see it, see, I do it thinking of a little bit different terms than you, but once you can observe it, how can that be part of you? And if you can observe it, it's not you, it's something that you are identifying with. And the secret, using your terms, disidentification, is that's the secret. So now you have this heightened awareness, and you get this heightened awareness through, you can use a drug, you can have a very deep meditation, which is not deep at all, it's very expansive and deep. But then what happens, and this is the part where my nephew and I are working on right now, what happens that you loop into the day-to-day and go about your business, and that consciousness is no longer the dominant thing, and your memory patterns or your traumas or your ego becomes the dominant thing again. But you sit there and you go, oh no, it's gone. No, it's okay. It's okay that it's gone, because it's always there. You just have to reclaim it. That's how I look at it. But that's the question we're working on right now, and how to not bring the old patterns back. But as far as release goes, what you said, I could not say it as well, but it's what I've experienced and released in some of my trauma.
The place where our minds get confused is we say, I have to identify and disidentify. There is no I. The identification is the process that creates the idea of me. Any event that's happened in the mind that you are identified with creates the idea of self. And I can trace this back very far evolutionarily, because every multi-celled organism has some rudimentary idea of self. The disidentification, and they carry it, and all the organisms have learned to remember things in order to get food, to get mates, to protect themselves, to know who's their children and not their, it's a very fundamental mechanism. The disidentification is strictly that the consciousness disidentifies. It's the awareness that flow of mysterious energy that we're using to do the process called identification. Identification is an ongoing process. It's not a label that you put on something and it's finished. It sucks our energy to maintain it all the time. The liberation that we feel as we disidentify is the energy that we've been using to do the identification becomes free energy as consciousness and love.
Well, maybe that's why I disidentified with it, because it was just sucking too much energy. I have chronic fatigue, so I just didn't have enough energy for it anymore. So I never even thought about doing it, it just happened.
That gets to the deep mystery of if there's no self, who's doing what? And why does it happen for some people now and other people it takes a few hundred lives before they get started?
I might have been at this for a few hundred lives.
For you and your nephew who are doing the work done, the ways to stay disidentified all the time are like Atisha's classic methods for being in meditation all the time. Be aware of breath at all times. And remember that anything you can be aware of is a movie, and you're the audience watching. And that's all techniques of meditation, the essence, that you are the witness and not the object of the witness. Exactly how that works, I don't know, but that's the description that most people can understand.
Well, the one thing I have noticed is that when I do, and I do call it when I fall from consciousness, that's the word that comes out naturally, is I'm aware of it. And then it used to be a long, long time ago, I go, oh, now it's gone forever. Oh, no, it's always there. So I had an attitudinal change that can be re-reached. So, just the other day, I fell and it lasted, just don't watch the news. The news will knock you right off your perch. But it fell, but then it was reclaimed so quickly. So the reclaiming part is, or the awareness part is, it's getting easier and more fluid, and there's not so much friction. But and my nephew's doing the same thing, and he's 20 plus years younger than I am. And he just hit meditation. He said, this is the thing I've been missing my whole life. He's only been meditating for a couple of years. But it's like so dynamic with him, it's amazing. And it took me, I've been meditating since I've been 16, and now I'm, significantly older than that. But it's the journey, right? And it's an enjoyable journey. Letting go of the trauma we were infused into the society with, the trauma that created these personalities. What's the point in holding on to it? You can get someone there by trying a ketamine or a psilocybin, then that just is a shortcut and a nice glimpse. And it's a beautiful thing, because if you can stop that particular program that's really blocking them, and you can do it when it's high, because there's so much evidence on this from the 60s that came out with psychiatry and experiments with LSD, that you can people will change their lives in that moment. So something happens in that moment that's so life-changing, and it's got to be exactly what you're speaking about, the disidentifying with the past trauma.
It allows your natural flow of energy, of self-love and wisdom. And that's where the amazing psychedelic experiences, seeing Jesus, God, or whatever that people often report, is it's the movie they make out of this sudden rush of energy that's available to us. The problem is people get hooked on the movie instead of realizing, oh, I just have to keep this energy flowing. How to do that? They pay too much attention to the object and not enough to that which imagines it's having the experience.
The one thing I did notice, and in this last time where I fell,
Yeah.
I did notice that because I'm very aware of how my energy flows through my body now. That's been something that's been happening for about 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And I noticed that my energy was not flowing through my body, or I was not aware of it flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Then once I reestablished that awareness with the energy, then I picked myself up again.
Do you feel stuff like that, Sammy Joe?
Not as much. No, Doug's much more dynamic in the experiences that he has, and mine are a lot more subtle.
But what are your clues? What are you aware of? Or is it a totally unconscious process?
Well, I mean, I make conscious efforts when I'm meditating, with the breathing and, the detachment, and trying to move my energy. But the rest of it's pretty much subconscious, I don't sit around and think about my past or my problems or my traumas or am I identified or not. I got bored with it.
That thinking about it is avoiding being conscious of it.
Right.
That's where all of psychotherapy is going down the wrong trail.
Yeah, no, I've never been very interested in that because it was just boring. Why go over the same story over and over again?
What I'm getting at is, at the beginning, there's a sense of making an effort as though I'm doing it. But over the years, it more and more becomes a happening. And slowly, the idea of me doing anything is disappearing. And the very idea of me doing it gets in the way of it happening. But still, there's an awareness of what's happening. The less I imagine I'm doing it, the more there's this awareness of what's happening. And I can, like Doug said, I can feel the energy flow inside me when I'm really tuned into the moment. And when I'm identified, I'm unaware of the energy flow. It's like the energy is going into creating the identification with what I imagine is going on, which is just a movie in my head, like everybody else says all the time. Like with patients, I'm at the point where I can be so in tune with my patients, but I get identified with the dance with them. And if I relax and remember that this also is a movie, then the energy starts to flow in me and I don't bring the problems home with me at night the way I used to before.
So when you're dealing with your patients with ketamine and you have somebody, I assume, sitting there or lying there, how do you direct them to first identify with their trauma? And then how do you deal with it at that point once they identify with it?
We talk to them as little as possible during the session. It's before time where I make it clear to everybody, whatever you see is a movie that your mind is making. And the more you can just relax, watch your breath. Don't try and change the movie, just watch it. Better it's going to come out. And let me even say, sometimes you're going to want to make explanations, so try and change what the mind is doing. Let it do it. Watch that too. You can't stop the mind with the mind. Letting go and disidentifying is a happening. It comes from relaxation, not from effort. And all us Westerners have been brought up to make efforts and improve ourselves so much that this is a really hard one for people to get. And the art of helping people out is to know when to say, dude, just relax. You're doing fine.
So are you seeing like immediate change when your patients come out of the ketamine high? Do they, I mean, they're coming out of a high. So, but is there actually a change that is impactful to their life that they're aware of?
Often, people will say, this is the first time in 20 years I haven't felt anxious, or I don't feel like I gotta go get a drink. A lot of people come out, they want a hug right away.
Yeah. So I think the drugs, from my experience and everything I read about it, which is probably just a little bit, but it's like the drugs give you that window of opportunity, or that chance to see it from a detached position, and that's the curative, isn't it?
I don't know how much of the effect is at at the chemical level, how much is at an even more fundamental bioenergetic level, how much of it is at a psychic level. You know, all our thinking is linear, but all these levels exist simultaneously. And what the interactive feedbacks are between, once you see it, it changes the chemistry, or once the chemistry is different, you see it differently, and how it stays, I don't know. I'm calling it as I see it now. And maybe in the next couple hundred years, there'll be a technology that can sort out the questions you raised of it.
Well, on a simpler level, how long does it last? And do they need to keep repeating the treatment?
Depends on how they've developed a witnessing practice, so that they learn not to to stay disidentified when the thoughts creep back, as they do after more or less, certainly after a week, the biochemical effects have stopped happening. It's really after a few hours that the acute changes, but there is neurological regeneration that's already been discovered that's going on for at least a week. The people who take booster shots, who keep doing it month after month and such, in my experience, are the ones who haven't developed a meditative practice. Just relying on the drug to do the work. But slowly they get some kind of meditative. But the mystery of how far a person is going to go in any given lifetime, I have seen, but it's beyond my pay grade to know where different people are at. What I have noticed in our lifetime is that there's something mysterious in the collective energy atmosphere, that change is available much more rapidly now than when we were kids. We were fighting something. The residuals of the old keep it the same way. So we had to struggle to get free. And now freedom is everywhere. People are unsure of the past, unsure of the future, not as attached, not as identified to the ideas of what I was and what I would be. And it brings up both the anxiety of, well, what the fuck is going on, and the freedom to, let's see where we can go from here. So I try and teach everybody, my 5 stars for being here now, to tune into yourself and see what's right for me right now. That each of us is a work in progress. an ongoing process. There's no goal. The best you can do is tune into what feels right for me right now.
And what are the 5 stars again?
Well, I've got 2 editions of it up now.
Yeah, no, I know, but did you have a synopsis of it just so that people know what to go look for?
Oh, you can look for 5 stars for being here now on YouTube. The essence of the 5 stars. The first one, take a deep breath and just feel whatever you imagine you are now. Embody yourself. The second one is to be aware of your breath, going all the way down in the pelvis, preferably as a deep exhale. Let the inhale happen by itself. And exhale. Third star, in the left side of your heart. Just remember you're a wave in this enormous ocean of energies, a node in an unknowably vast network, one with everything. What the traditional religions mean when they say God is within you and without you. You are that. You are everything and nothing. And then the 4th star on the right side of the heart is to remember that anything you conceptualize, any thought, feeling, concept, all these wonderful things that have come to your mind, you're none of them. You're only the awareness. You're just an audience watching this movie. Then you put your attention in your horror. Few fingers underneath your belly button and inside, and you ask it any question. I'm asking myself, has what I said been correct? And it says absolutely. If you want a reference for this, go to Tilopa's Song of Mahamudra, which Osho talks about in Only One Sky, Tantra, the Supreme Understanding, where he says the root cause of all suffering is identification. And the supreme accomplishment is to realize immanence without hope, which means everything is right here. There's neither thought nor fear about the future. Here we are, this is it. That's all we got, that's all we're ever going to have. And the more you think about it, the worse it is.
Yes, we've listened to Tilopa many times, many times, and read it. So yes, that's very sustaining. What about chronic pain? Because I've heard people talking a lot about ketamine for various conditions. Have you treated anybody with like chronic regional pain syndrome or other idiopathic pains that haven't responded to anything else?
Yes. There was this one guy who had bilateral neuropathies from Lyme's disease. He couldn't feel his legs and stuff. And like after the first session, he felt his cat walk by him and brush his leg, and he realized he hadn't felt that in years. He's a guy in his 50s and he's skateboarding now.
Oh my gosh.
And we've had people with fibromyalgia. So just how much of pain is an identification with the sensation? And how much healing happens when you let go of your identification with the pain? There are many anecdotes, but you know, it's so against the materialist medical model now that people who are ambitious and career driven don't make any research into it because drug companies won't pay them to say, hey, dudes, you're wasting your money.
Well, patients want to know this for sure. I mean, they don't care what the money the pharmaceuticals need to make. They just want to feel better.
Yes. That's part of the revolution that's going on the planet, empowering the individual to be in charge of their own life.
Yeah. And they're decriminalizing a lot of drugs now, magic mushrooms, and like especially in Oregon, as I told you earlier.
Yeah.
And it's just going to start. It'll be in Washington State soon, and for sure California.
Well, and you're in the vanguard there, helping patients obtain this freedom.
Well, it's an effective way of doing a thing, and you can sit there and meditate and never get there, but drugs can open that window for you right away,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
But like you say, you have to shore it up with the meditative practice, or you're just going on doing the drugs endlessly.
Bodhicitta, thank you. This was really beautiful.
Thank you. I have a friend, Chris Beals, who I've known for 60 years. And every Christmas we call each other and sing together on the phone. God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day. Sing along. To save us all from Satan's fire when we had gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
Merry Christmas.
Nice to see you again.